Everyone in the hospital knew her name, but not for the right reasons. Nurse Emily Carter walked the hallways with her head slightly lowered, doing her job quietly, kindly, and alone. Some patients loved her. She had the softest hands and the warmest voice, but many of the staff treated her like she didn't belong. They said she was too slow, too soft, too emotional. Whenever something went wrong, blame somehow found its way to her desk, even when she wasn't on shift. But Emily just kept working, kept caring, kept treating every patient like family, even when no one treated her the same. Emily always arrived early. She cleaned bed rails, checked charts twice, even brought extra blankets for patients who shivered at night. But no matter how much she tried, something always went wrong. And somehow, always, the blame landed on her shoulders. One morning, a medication tray went missing. A doctor shouted at her in the hallway before she could even speak. Another nurse complained she was too gentle and too slow for a real emergency. Emily stood there quietly, swallowing the pain like medicine she never asked for. She wanted to defend herself. She wanted to shout back. But she never did. Instead, she stayed silent, because she knew that arguing would only make things worse. Behind her, in the break room, some nurses laughed about her. "She's too soft," one said. "I don't know how she even got hired," another joked. Emily heard it all, and still walked into the next patient's room with the same warm smile she always gave. No one knew the truth. Not yet. No one knew how strong she really was, or how much the hospital would one day depend on the nurse they treated like she was nothing. Not everyone in the hospital ignored Emily. There was one patient, Mr. Thompson, an older man with weak lungs who had been staying for weeks. He didn't talk much, but he watched everything. He watched how the other nurses rushed in and out of rooms like machines, never stopping long enough to notice when he struggled to breathe. He watched how Dr. Marcus barked orders at Emily, even when she had done nothing wrong. And he watched how Emily stayed gentle, patient, and kind, even when the world around her felt cold. One evening, Mr. Thompson had a bad coughing fit. He pressed the call button once, twice, 3 times. No one came. Except Emily. She didn't walk. She ran. She helped him sit up, rubbed his back gently, and whispered, "It's okay. Just breathe. I'm right here." She stayed with him for 15 minutes, talking softly until his breathing slowed again. When he finally relaxed, he looked at her with tired eyes and said, "You're the only one here who treats me like a human being." Emily almost cried right there. But she held it in, smiled softly, and said, "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Thompson." He shook his head. "No. You're doing more than that. Don't let them break you." And in that quiet hospital room, filled with beeping machines and fading light, someone finally saw her. The next morning started like every other for Emily, quietly, with her hair tied back, her scrubs neatly pressed, and her hands already carrying more responsibility than anyone gave her credit for. She checked vitals. She updated charts. She smiled at patients who hadn't seen their families in weeks. But then, something happened that would change everything. In room 312, the room Emily had just left, an alarm suddenly went off. A heart monitor started beeping loudly. Nurses rushed in. Dr. Marcus stormed behind them. The patient, a man recovering from surgery, had a sudden drop in oxygen. Before Emily could even step forward to help, Dr. Marcus shouted, "Emily, what did you do?" The hallway froze. Every head turned. Every eye fell on her. Emily felt her chest tighten, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't do anything, doctor. I checked his vitals 10 minutes ago. They were stable." But Marcus didn't listen. He never did. "You must have missed something. You always do." Emily's breath shook. But she didn't cry. Not this time. What made it worse was the way the other nurses looked at her. Some with judgment, some with suspicion, some with the kind of relief that only comes when someone else takes the blame. But then, quietly, from the corner of the room, Mr. Thompson whispered to her, "Stay strong, child." The words steadied her heart, because deep down, she knew the truth. She knew she had done everything right. She knew something else had gone wrong. Something bigger. Something no one wanted to see. But in that moment, they all needed someone to blame. And they chose her. Emily walked out of room 312 with her heart pounding in her chest. She had been yelled at before, but never like this. Not in front of her colleagues. Not while a patient was watching. She sat quietly in the empty quiet room, the small place in the hospital where nurses take breaks, cry silently, or gather themselves before going back to work. Emily pressed her hands together and whispered, "I'm trying. I'm really trying." But no one was there to hear her. To most people in this hospital, Emily Carter was the clumsy nurse. The one who worked too slowly. The one who made small mistakes. The one everyone laughed at during breaks. But what no one knew was why she was slow. Emily had been supporting her sick mother at home. Every night she stayed up taking care of her, barely sleeping 3 to 4 hours before coming to work. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't incompetent. She was exhausted, and carrying a weight no one cared to ask about. While Emily wiped her tears, a soft knock came at the door. It was Nurse Lila, the only person in the whole hospital who ever treated Emily with kindness. "Emily, are you okay?" she asked gently. Emily forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just another day." Lila shook her head. "You don't deserve this. You're one of the kindest nurses here. They just don't see it." Emily looked down at her hands. "I just want to help people, that's all." Lila sat beside her. "And you do. Even when they treat you badly, you still show kindness. That makes you stronger than all of them." Emily felt tears gather again, but this time, not from pain, but from finally feeling understood. And while they spoke quietly in that room, a code blue alarm suddenly echoed through the hospital halls. And everything changed. The code blue alarm blasted through the hospital speakers like a shockwave. Emily shot up immediately, tears still wet on her face, heart still heavy, hands still shaking, but her instincts were stronger than her pain. She ran down the hallway with Lila right behind her, weaving through panicked staff members and patients peeking out of their rooms. The bright hospital lights flashed across her scrubs as she moved faster than anyone had ever seen her. When she reached the emergency room doorway, she froze for a split second. It was the same patient from earlier, the one whose doctor had blamed her for a mistake she didn't even make. Now, the patient wasn't breathing. Doctors and nurses crowded around, shouting orders. Emily saw the monitor flatline, a long, piercing beep filling the room. Everyone was frantic, but no one could see what she saw. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady for the first time that day. "Stop. His oxygen line is twisted." Everyone turned. Dr. Peterson, the same doctor who yelled at her, looked stunned. Emily didn't wait for permission. She pushed through, gently but quickly correcting the twisted oxygen tube, stabilizing the mask, and adjusting the air valve. Seconds later, the patient gasped. The monitor sparked back to life. Beep, beep, beep. The whole room fell silent. Emily stepped back, breathing hard, her hands trembling, but her eyes steady. Lila whispered behind her, "You saved him. Emily, you actually saved him." For the first time ever, the doctors who mocked her stared at her with disbelief, not because she messed up, but because she had just done what none of them could do. Even Dr. Peterson's face changed from anger to shock, and then something Emily had never seen in his eyes before. Respect. The hospital had just witnessed the truth. The nurse everyone underestimated was far more skilled, far more calm, and far more dedicated than any of them knew. Emily didn't say a word. She only stepped back as the room slowly filled with whispers. She saved him. She saw what we didn't. How did she notice that so fast? And for the first time in her entire career, Emily stood in a room full of people who finally saw her worth. The emergency room slowly calmed, but the air felt different now. Emily stood near the bed, still catching her breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from the weight of what had just happened. For the first time all day, no one was telling her she was wrong. No one was calling her careless. No one was whispering behind her back. Instead, they were staring at her like they were seeing her for the very first time. Dr. Peterson, the same man who humiliated her in room 12, stepped forward slowly. The anger on his face was gone, replaced by disbelief, and something Emily never expected, guilt. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice rough, "everything you said earlier, you were right." Lila walked up beside Emily, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You saved him, Em." No one else even noticed the tube. The other nurses nodded slowly, their expressions soft and ashamed. One of them whispered, "She's the best among us, and we treated her like she was nothing." For Emily, it was surreal. All the hurt, all the humiliation, all the loneliness, suddenly replaced by a quiet, warm strength rising inside her. Dr. Peterson finally exhaled and spoke again. "I owe you an apology. Publicly. I misjudged you, terribly." Emily swallowed hard, her eyes stinging, not from sadness this time, but from relief she had been waiting years to feel. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want praise. All she ever wanted was to be seen. Just then, the patient opened his eyes slightly. Weak, but alive. Emily leaned closer, her voice soft, professional, steady. "You're safe now. We've got you." And the man, still struggling to breathe, whispered, "Thank you." At that moment, Lila wiped a tear from her cheek. Dr. Peterson looked down at the floor, humbled. The room full of people who once ignored her now stood in awe. Emily Carter, the nurse everyone underestimated, had just become the nurse who saved a life and changed the entire hospital. Word traveled fast. Hospitals are loud places, full of alarms, footsteps, voices. But that evening, the loudest thing spreading through the corridors was Emily's story. Nurses whispered to each other as they passed. "Did you hear? Emily caught what the doctor missed. She saved the man in room 12. Peterson apologized to her, in front of everyone." Doctors who once walked past her without noticing suddenly stopped when she entered a room. Some nodded respectfully. Some looked embarrassed. A few couldn't even meet her eyes. For so long, Emily felt invisible here. She showed up early, stayed late, never complained. She carried the weight of patients no one else wanted. She volunteered for shifts others refused. But today, the whole hospital finally realized how much they depended on her. As Emily walked down the hallway, her steps were slow and careful. Not because she was tired, but because everything felt surreal. She passed two junior nurses who immediately straightened up. One of them whispered, "That's her. Nurse Carter." Emily pretended not to hear, but a small, shy smile tugged at her lips. Near the nurses' station, Dr. Peterson stood talking to two department heads. When he saw Emily approaching, he stopped mid-sentence. He walked forward. "Emily," he said softly, "I've spoken to the board. We've added your intervention to the official incident log. You will be recognized at tomorrow's staff briefing." Emily blinked, stunned. She had never been recognized publicly for anything. And, he hesitated, I told them I was wrong. Entirely. For a moment, Emily felt her throat close up. Not from pain, but because this was something she never imagined she would hear. Lila came up beside her. You see, Em? I told you. Your kindness, your heart. It always comes back. Down the hall, the patient's family arrived, the man's wife and teenage son. The wife rushed toward Emily with tears in her eyes. He told me. He said you saved him, she said, gripping Emily's hands tightly. God bless you, nurse. You saved my husband. You saved our family. Emily felt her eyes well up again, not from sadness, not from exhaustion, but from finally feeling valued. This was the moment that changed everything. She wasn't the nurse everyone hated anymore. She was the nurse everyone owed their gratitude to. And deep inside, Emily realized something. Sometimes the world won't see your heart right away. Sometimes people will judge you before they know you. But kindness, consistency, and courage, they always reveal the truth in the end. The news traveled fast through the hospital. By evening, the story had spread to every department, from pediatrics to the ER. Staff whispered in the hallways, patients' families nodded with relief, and even the security guards talked about it at the front desk. Emily Carter, the nurse everyone mocked, the one they blamed for every little mistake, had saved an entire floor of patients with quick thinking, courage, and heart. When Emily stepped out of room 12, she wasn't ready for what waited for her. A small group of staff had gathered, not out of anger this time, but out of gratitude. They clapped quietly at first, then louder. Emily froze, her eyes filling with tears. She wasn't used to this. Respect, appreciation, kindness. The same people who rolled their eyes at her that morning were now thanking her. Even Dr. Thompson, the man who humiliated her in front of everyone, stepped forward. His voice was low, but sincere. Emily, I misjudged you. Today, you saved us. You saved lives. I'm sorry. Emily swallowed hard, wiping her tears with the back of her sleeve. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her heart spoke louder than any words could. For the first time since joining the hospital, Emily didn't feel alone. She felt valued, seen, finally understood. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled. That night, Emily walked outside the hospital to clear her mind. The air was cold, painfully still, the kind of cold that makes your chest tighten. She stood under the soft glow of the street lamp, staring at the ground, finally letting herself breathe. After everything she had endured, the whispers, the blame, the humiliation, she felt drained, almost hollow. But still, she didn't cry. Because deep down, she knew something the world often forgets. Doing the right thing doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence, and loneliness, and doubt. But she also knew. She saved a life today. And no amount of hatred could take that away from her. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Dr. Harris walked out slowly, each step heavy, like a man carrying the weight of his own guilt. For once, he didn't look powerful or confident. He looked small, human. Sorry, Emily, he said, his voice quiet and shaking. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect. You saved my patient. You saved my team. And I was too blind to see your worth. Emily stayed silent, staring at the cold concrete. She let his words sink into the wounds she had been carrying alone. Then he said something she never expected. I want you to stay. This hospital needs you. I need you. Not as your supervisor, but as someone who finally learned what humility looks like. Slowly, Emily lifted her head. Her eyes were tired. Her spirit was bruised. But her voice was steady. I never wanted praise. I just wanted to be treated like a person. Dr. Harris nodded, for once without ego, and whispered, "You will be. Starting tonight." They stood there quietly, two people who had finally seen the truth behind each other's walls. And inside the hospital windows behind them, something had changed. The nurses who once avoided Emily were now talking about her bravery. The patients who overheard the story whispered her name with gratitude. And the staff who once doubted her felt a shift, a realization, a reminder of what true kindness looks like. Emily walked back inside, but she didn't walk in alone. She walked in with respect, with dignity, and with a new sense of purpose. Because sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who stand in the storm, quietly doing the right thing, even when nobody is watching. Emily didn't become a hero because she wanted to be. She became a hero because she refused to let the world harden her heart. And that's the kind of kindness that doesn't just save lives. It changes them. And remember, in a world full of noise and cruelty, kindness doesn't always make headlines, but it always makes a difference, especially in the places no one sees. KindSoul Corner. Stories that heal the heart.